Shalom everyone, my name is Roland and this is the Way of Yahuah YouTube channel. In this video, I'm gonna show you a discussion between Billy Carson and Wes Huff, and they are going to talk about Billy's ideas. If somebody doesn't know Billy Carson, he's something like the Alex Jones of spirituality, spreading all sorts of unfounded conspiracies about different kinds of scriptures. However, essentially he's a modern Gnostic, and he believes that he can get rid of his fleshly body, and through his acquiring knowledge, eventually he reaches Christ consciousness, and everybody on earth will actually reach this Christ consciousness, and we all going to become gods and create paradise on earth. I have listened to his videos and ideas for a long time. I'm not really familiar with it, but I've known him. And the reason for my making this video is because I think he finally found someone in Wes Huff who can actually teach him something about reality and what really goes on in terms of textual criticism and manuscripts, which Billy has absolutely no clue. For this reason, in this video and in this discussion, he gets absolutely destroyed, annihilated. He just shows so much ignorance and a lack of his understanding of biblical manuscripts and text scriptures that I don't even know how he can stand up after this. Nonetheless, please like and share this video, and also write a comment and tell me what you think about Billy Carson and Wes Huff. Who do you agree with, and what is your opinion about this?
The statement is according to the Sinai Bible. Okay, according to the Sinai Bible, Jesus wasn't crucified in that Bible. And that Bible predates the King James Version of the Bible, and the text there actually is about 12 to 14,000 differences between the Sinai Bible and the King James Version of the Bible, which came much later. And then also one of the things that were interesting is that they discovered the book of Jesus' wife, which is at the Harvard Seminary, which, according to some scholars, that's a little controversial, but they claim that this is an accurate record that Jesus may have even been married, which then, adds more, if that's true, it adds more to, the hypothesis that maybe he wasn't crucified. I just personally believe that Jesus was an amazing human being. I don't think that he was the Son of God in the sense that he's God, but that we're all gods. As he said, ye are gods, and that we're to do greater things in him. And I just personally believe that the return of the Christ is the return of the Christ consciousness. When we can all achieve a certain level of knowledge, wisdom, passion, understanding, empathy, love that he came to this planet with, and we get that in our mind and our conscience, and we can act on those incredible emotions and that understanding, that the whole world is going to transform instantaneously. And I think at the second coming is the coming of the Christ consciousness to the planet, not a human being flying back to Earth to save people. That's just my personal understanding of how I've perceived it over many, many years of going through this information and going through all this text.
Even from this little clip, everyone can understand that he has no clue about what he's talking about. He thinks there's some book on Amazon called the Sinai Bible predates the King James Bible. Sinai Bible that doesn't even exist. I think he's talking about Codex Sinaiticus, but that just shows his ignorance and lack of depth in terms of understanding scriptures, manuscripts, and he's going to get exposed utterly here.
Yeah, well, first let me say, I think it's really cool to not just be in the room proverbially with you, Billy, but be able to interact with you, because I wish I could be there in person. Unfortunately, Toronto, Canada is a long way away from Florida. It's a little bit of a jaunt, but I really appreciate the fact that you seem to have investigated to a certain degree some of these facts. Do you mind if I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
When you say the Sinai Bible, what are you referring to specifically?
It's the biblical text that was written. It made it into you can actually look it up on Amazon. It's a Bible I have a version at home. It's called the Sinai Bible, right, from Mount Sinai. I'm assuming that's the mountain that they're referencing there. But they put together their own version of the biblical text prior to the King James Version being put out.
Sure. So when you refer to the Sinai Bible, would you be referring to Codex Sinaiticus? Like the codex that comes. Okay. That's why I was trying to get some clarification, because so you can actually go and see Codex Sinaiticus is at the British Library, so you can go and see it. It's on display, and the British Library has actually digitized the entire manuscript. So I work with manuscripts in my linguistic work. I'm an expert on early Christian scribal culture, and particularly in Greek and Coptic manuscripts. I actually have a facsimile. So I have a photocopy that was done by the British Library of Codex Sinaiticus that I work with in my office. So I have it here. And the only reason I ask for clarification is because I want to make sure that what I'm addressing is actually what you mean.
Yeah, he wants to clarify that, because if Billy is talking about the Codex Sinaiticus, then he's just going to get absolutely exposed. He doesn't understand that Codex Sinaiticus is not a different Bible. That's just one of the first complete Bible versions we have in our collection of codexes. And it's amazing how he just doesn't understand this, Billy. I think he just came here unprepared and he thought that he's going to be the expert here. And then here's Wes. And obviously, Wes is an expert, a real expert. And I'm not Christian. And I don't believe that theologians or all these scholars know everything. However, there are fields of theology and scholarship that are unquestionable, and what Wes does, it is one of them. And I am unsure at what point Billy Carson understood that he's in really deep water here, but at some point that's going to be obvious that he figured this out.
Gotcha.
And not addressing something else. Because the Codex Sinaiticus in particular is just a Greek, it's a 4th century Greek manuscript. Mm-hmm. It comes from approximately between 325 and 350 AD. And its text of the Gospels reads almost identical to the modern Greek text that we develop translations from. So my curiosity is just simply in kind of exploring, when you say that it denies the crucifixion or that the crucifixion isn't there, I mean, I can go on right now, Codex Sinaiticus, and I can look up the end of, say, Matthew 27, mm-hmm. where it has Jesus being crucified. And that's in Codex Sinaiticus, or, the John 19, or any of the other ones. So I think my confusion is that it doesn't read any differently. So actually, are you able to pull up a website with the viewers or listeners or whatever be able to see that?
Right now to make sure I have the version that I'm looking at.
While he's pulling that up too, where was that piece
I found
discovered?
the text where I was referencing. Actually, I was misquoted. I misquoted there. It's the Gospel of Barnabas.
Okay, yeah. Well, so that's good. So let's deal with that too, because I've actually worked with. There are 2 manuscripts of the Gospel of Barnabas. The Gospel of Barnabas is a really interesting document.
Now that's strange that now he's talking about the Gospel of Barnabas, and everyone knows the Gospel of Barnabas is a forgery and has nothing to do with Barnabas. Even I think very basic level understanding, someone can figure that out, but not Billy Carson. Anyway, he's going to get a free lesson from Wes Huff.
Because it is a known forgery. And so that's why I think it's important to get to these sources. So at the very start of the Gospel of Barnabas, which we only have 2 copies of, one is in Italian and one is in Spanish, we see right off the bat that the Gospel of Barnabas, not to be confused with either the Epistle of Barnabas or the Acts of Barnabas, which are 2 apocryphal documents from the 2nd century, mm-hmm. but the Gospel of Barnabas in particular, we know it's a forgery because it does things like, in chapter 92, it says that Jesus spent 40 days on Mount Sinai, and then he came to the Jordan River, and he walked to Jerusalem. But Mount Sinai is more than a week's journey away from Jerusalem, and neither Mount Sinai nor Jerusalem are close to the Jordan River. So never mind there not being a route from the Jordan River to, around Mount Sinai or going to Jerusalem. But there are internal problems with the Gospel of Barnabas, which indicate that it shows no actual indication of evidence of coming from or even having knowledge of 1st century Jewish understanding. It actually says Jesus is the Christ, but not the Messiah.
A scholar like Billy Carson should really be familiar with these facts. And if he was familiar with this, then he tried to lie. If he wasn't, then he's unprepared. Either way, I don't know how can he claim to be some sort of authority figure on spirituality and these manuscripts and scriptures, and he just doesn't know these basic facts. And I am unsure how he can get out of this later on.
Which indicates that whoever the author is, he didn't know that those were the same words. And I think a bigger problem is that the Gospel of Barnabas actually paraphrases Dante's Inferno, which was written in 1314. So there's a lot of internal evidences that disqualify the Gospel of Barnabas, never mind the fact that we don't have any evidence of it prior to the 14th century, and none in any other language other than Middle Age Italian Italian and Spanish. But the internal content of the Gospel of Barnabas disqualifies it from being ancient. And then the fact that it's doing things like paraphrasing Dante, or it also refers to a rule of the time of Jubilee, which was changed in the Middle Ages from what it was in the biblical year of Jubilee. And it goes with the Middle Ages concept, not the ancient concept. So I think what I'm getting at is, so I'm a historian, and I deal with sources. So when I'm looking at sources, I want to make sure that I have a methodology by which I approach any type of source. So if there is something that denies the crucifixion, I want to make sure that I'm analyzing it and that the methodology by which I analyze it actually reveals that the content can be accurately tied to the event. So if we're talking about, say, Codex Sinaiticus, that's in the 4th century. Now that is, I would agree with you, Billy, our oldest copy of the Bible in the sense of cover to cover, Genesis to Revelation copy of the Bible.
Right.
The problem is that we have individual copies of all 4 Gospels going back hundreds of years before Codex Sinaiticus. So I have a facsimile behind me of...
This is a free lesson for Billy Carson, and I think he starts to feel the heat.
Of P66. This is a late 2nd century copy of the Gospel of John. I work with this particular manuscript. I can just show the screen right here. This is an almost complete copy of the Gospel of John. And it
Is that the
has the
papyrus by
crucifixion.
any chance?
Yeah,
That's
so
great.
papyrus is just the what it's made out of. So
I
got that from
Yeah.
ChatGPT, by the way.
Yeah,
Sorry,
so
guys, I'm just
I can
trying to sound
actually-
smart for a second.
I have that papyrus.
Oh, that's
yeah, so I'll show you this. So the documents you actually see on my bookshelf behind me are facsimile papyri that I've made. So when I was in Egypt last summer, I went and I got made for me some papyrus sheets. And so I take these papyrus sheets, which are made from the papyrus plant, and then when I go and I look at actual manuscripts, so I was at the University of Philadelphia last summer, and I went and I saw a document called P1, which is a 3rd century fragment of the beginning of the Gospel of Matthew. And so what I did is I sat down with that original and I produced a facsimile. So I copied the text. First of all, I cut it out with an X-Acto knife in not the original 3rd century one on my papyrus. I cut out with an X-Acto knife this guy, and then I copied the text transcriptionally on the front and the back. So papyrus is just simply, it's what it's made out of.
Yeah.
And so there's categorizing systems, and the standard one is called the Gregory Alland categorizing system. And so sometimes you'll see when manuscripts are mentioned, they'll have a GA.
Yeah, they have absolutely no clue what you're talking about.
And then a number behind it. If it's made of papyrus, you simply abbreviate the word papyrus to P, and then you have the numbering system. So P66, what I showed you earlier, that's this on the categorizing system. It's the 66th manuscript that was put into the system. It's from the Gospel of John. I also have, P46 and P47 on my shelf, which includes all 4 Gospels and Acts from the 2nd and 3rd centuries. So the only hesitation I have with what you said, Billy, is that we have single copies of the Gospels that can be dated to the 2nd century that all do have the crucifixion. And so if we're relying on something like the Gospel of Barnabas, which is not just like, it's not that there's debate about it, it's that it's a known forgery. I mean, no one's referring to the Gospel of Barnabas as anything other than...
If you say it's a known forgery, yes, but I'm going to go with that.
Yeah, somebody is referring to that. That's Billy Carson. But Billy's cool with that, and he's gonna suggest to just move on to another topic. Fortunately, Wes won't allow him to just sneak out of this news.
The only hesitation I have with what you said, Billy, is that we have single copies of the Gospels.
Forgery, yes, but I'm going to...
And Acts from the 2nd and 3rd centuries. Single copies of the Gospels.
Say it's a known forgery, yes, but I'm going to go with that. Let's talk about the Old Testament a little bit, and leading up into the New.
Well, hold on, because do you mind if I address the Gospel of Jesus' wife?
Sure, go ahead.
What was her name?
Yeah,
I'm like trying to write notes like I know what I'm doing, but I'm just curious.
So the Gospel of Jesus' wife doesn't actually mention. So oftentimes what happens is that the text of the Gospel of Jesus' wife is kind of paralleled with the Gospel of Philip, which mentions that that Jesus would kiss Mary Magdalene on the mouth. And so those are kind of used in parallel to kind of for this argument that Jesus was married. So the Gospel of Jesus' wife is in the Harvard Library. However, the reason we know it's also not legitimate is because even though the manuscript, the papyrus that it's on, was carbon dated to the 4th century, the text was actually copied from a PDF version of the Gospel of Thomas known as Grandin's Interlinear, and there was a mistake in the Coptic text of Grandin's Interlinear that was copied into the Gospel of Jesus' wife. So we know that this is not a legitimate document, even though the papyrus is ancient, and this happens a lot with forgeries.
Okay, I think this is very insightful, because all the people who have doubts about Bible manuscripts and if anyone forged the Bible or they wrote something in or left something out, this is not just some people finding papyrus and manuscripts here and there and say, oh, hallelujah, we found another version of Matthew. No, these people spend their whole lives and try to examine these texts. And we need to understand that people like him, Wes Huff, and scholars who work with these manuscripts, they are the foundation for everything else in biblical research and scholarship. Without their work, there would be no manuscripts. There would be no solid foundation for understanding truth from the Bible. And that is very important to acknowledge and also pass on to people who are skeptic and doubt the validity and originality of Bible manuscripts.
I have a couple of friends who have actually worked on projects that have revealed forgeries within Dead Sea Scroll manuscripts and within other ancient Christian papyri. But the reason why we know the Gospel of Jesus' wife and that Karen King, who kind of vouched for it and she lost a lot of credibility, unfortunately, for her, and she's admitted that it's a fake as well, was because we can tie it directly to not copying from an ancient text, but actually copying from an online version of the Gospel of Thomas in a PDF form, and the mistake on that PDF form was copied into the text that was borrowed in the phraseology of Jesus' wife. So I just point that out is, once again, with our sourcing, I think we need to make sure that we're going towards not just early sources, but actually credible sources. And unfortunately, neither the Gospel of Barnabas nor the Gospel of Jesus' wife are credible sources in terms of actually, and agreed upon by not just the vast majority of scholarship, but I don't know anybody in the field of papyrology, paleography, historiography, who actually refers to these documents as being legitimate.
That's fair enough. I can respect that. So let's go into the Old Testament a little bit. Predominantly from my research.
Now Billy wants to go to the Old Testament, and we're going to come back and review that as well later on in a video. Please write me a comment. Let me know what you think about Billy Carson, Wes Huff, what you knew about them, if anything, and if anything's changed after watching this clip. I hope to see you soon. Please like and share this video and subscribe to the channel. Watch all the other videos I made on Christology and grace and the law. And I'll see you soon. Hallelujah and shalom.